last night. Our only loss was the Miami Heat. They lost to the Boston Celtics in pretty decisive fashion. I would still bet that game in that spot 30 times out of 30. We've been fading Boston following a win, cashing at it, no lie, an 80% clip this season. And then they kind of roster manipulated us. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown weren't at shoot around. Jaylen Brown didn't end up playing, but Tatum did. He had a good game. Shout out Tatum. Heat, we'll be able to bet that team certain spots, certain situations. They still got to kind of figure out how to bring everybody together on their roster right now. They're following their trade as well. But it is what it is, ladies and gentlemen, man. Let's talk about today, man. Let's make some money today. Again, small card, but we're finna cook it up and try to smash it per usual. All I ask is that you smash that like button for me. You subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And as I always say, man, if you're rocking with me, rock with me. I'm active on Instagram and Twitter all day long. There's a link for both in the description below. And, of course, I have premium plays over at the site. First game on the board. We got the Toronto Raptors out on the road facing the Philadelphia 76ers. Sixers laying 9.5 points in this one. This is an interesting game. Of course, y'all know my beliefs on the Philadelphia 76ers. I think 9 times out of 10, they're overrated, overvalued. I do understand that overrated and overvalued teams do cover in certain spots and situations to justify why they're overrated and overvalued. I just don't feel like that's the spot tonight for Philadelphia. Raptors have been a really good cover team this season, mainly at home. We've been attacking the Raptors as a home underdog plenty this season. As an away underdog, they're around 50-50. They're just a 50-50 away team. I think this is one of them 50-50 games that bounces their way, man. Philadelphia is just too overrated, too overvalued with Embiid coming back in the lineup. Nothing here yells lay 9.5 with Philly. I know the Raptors haven't been all that great recently, but they haven't been terrible. They've covered in back-to-back road games, covered in Oklahoma City, covered in Houston, and I think they do the same thing tonight, cover in Philadelphia. Philadelphia loses 4 of their last 5. They don't deserve to be laying this many points, so I'm not going to do it. I'd much rather have the points in my back pocket with the team that's been a much better overall ATS team this season in the Toronto Money Raptors, fading the overrated, overvalued Philadelphia 76ers. Just my thoughts. We keep it rolling, man. We head over to Indiana, where the Pacers are 2.5, 1.5 home dogs in this one. Do your line shopping. Line's kind of bouncing right now at the time of recording this video. Regardless, man, the Pacers are dogs at home with the Knicks rolling in. This is a good one, man. I can't wait to watch this one. TNT game. This one definitely deserves to be on TNT. Keep an eye on the injury report. Miles Turner, game time decision tonight for the Pacers. OG Anunoby, game time decision. Josh Hart, game time decision. Ultimately, I think everybody playing. We've seen these two teams match up twice this season. Knicks won the first meeting 123-98 on the 25th of October, way back at the beginning of the season. Pacers won the most recent meeting. It was back on the 10th of November, 132-121 in Indiana. Knicks, they come into this game following a loss in their last one. They got absolutely flooded on Saturday by the Boston Celtics, 131-104. Game before that, they beat the Raptors. Game before that, they beat the Rockets. Game before they lost to the Lakers. Knicks right now have been just in flow. They've lost to kind of who I've expected them to lose to, and they've beaten who they're quote-unquote supposed to beat. Tonight, y'all know my thoughts, man. I've said this plenty of times. I think the Pacers are going back to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think the Pacers are the better basketball team tonight, and you're going to give me them as a home underdog? I'm there. Give me Indiana. Land the one or plus 1.5, straight up money line, however you want to do it. I think Indiana's the better team overall. I definitely want to see Miles Turner play tonight. I know this is an unpopular opinion. I know many people believe the Knicks are the better basketball team. The books have them favored in Indiana for a reason, but I don't agree. I'm taking the team that was in the Eastern Conference Finals a season ago, a team that broke, a ton of offensive metrics just a season ago, and they're trending back towards that right now. Currently, give me the Pacers, man. Bounce back game at home, following a tough loss to the Lakers in that last one. We trust the Pacers at home. We do. We're going to bet them there tonight. Give me Indiana plus the points. or outright money line here in that one. We'll keep it rolling. We head over to Chicago, where the Bulls are 4.5-point home dogs with the Detroit Pistons, rolling in total 237.5. Just lean on Detroit. Detroit's the better basketball team. Chicago, I think, is finna enter full-blown tank mode. That's kind of the sign they showed when they traded Zach LaVine. I feel like they kind of just waved the white flag then. And Chicago, what we know about them is they play their better basketball on the road. We've seen them now get blown out in back-to-back games. Minnesota blew them out 127-108, and then Golden State aired them out 132-111. The Pistons beat up on them in the most recent meeting, 127-119. That was on the 2nd of this month, so not even that long ago. That game was in Detroit, though. The Bulls won the first meeting, 122-112 in Detroit back in November.
Listen, this is
November on the 18th. I don't like how Chicago's looked again. I feel like they've waved the white flag. I feel like Detroit, although not the greatest spot coming off the extended homestand, I feel like they're the better basketball team. I feel like they got more to play for. I feel like they're taking it more seriously. I feel like this is going to be like a play-in 8th seed style team, and Chicago's going to kind of take a back seat. And I think these games are the games that kind of separate the two. Give me Detroit. I'll lay the 4.5 here in this one. Last and final game of the night, man. This is probably, I would say, I don't know. I think that Knicks Pacers is the bigger game, but many people will say, Jay, you're crazy. Grizzlies Suns is the bigger game. And I wouldn't necessarily argue. They're both great, both on TNT tonight. Of course, I will be sitting back watching the doubleheader right there with y'all. The Grizzlies, man, laying 3.5 on the road. The Grizzlies won the first meeting between these two, 117-112 in Phoenix. That game was on the last day of the year of 2024, on the 31st of December. Grizzlies coming in this game following a loss. They just lost to Oklahoma City, 125-112 at home in their last one. Phoenix, they've lost 4 of their last 5. They got embarrassed in their last one by the Denver Chicken Nuggets, 122-105. Interesting game we got going on here, man. I'm on the Memphis Grizzlies. This is a game I just don't want to overcomplicate. This is the best ATS team in the league, the Memphis Grizzlies, versus the worst ATS team in the league in the Phoenix Suns. I don't want to overcomplicate it, man. One team has printed money this season. One team has absolutely thrown it away. So just sticking to who these two teams have been. The Grizzlies are the better basketball team. The general population may not think that because they don't watch the NBA games on a night-to-night basis and they just look at the stars, who's on the floor. The Suns got Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. They're better. That's just the general thought. The Grizzlies are the better team by a pretty sizable margin. There's a reason why they're over a bucket favorite on the road. Better team overall, better ATS team. The best ATS team versus the worst ATS team. Don't want to overcomplicate it, man. So, last and final game of the night, I'm on the Memphis Grizzlies laying the points in this one, man. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate each and every one of you that continue to tune in and watch this video. It really means the world to me, man. All I ask is that you smash that like button for me. You subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And as I always say, man, if you're rocking with me, rock with me. I'm active on Instagram and Twitter all day long. There's a link for both in the description below. And of course, I have premium plays over at the site, including my NBA play of the day.
Put your money to work with 4% APY from Robinhood Gold. Sign up for Robinhood Gold now.
Anyone with $10,000 or more in credit card debt or personal loans may qualify for help from National Debt Relief. Getting started is easy, and the process has already helped over 500,000 people and counting.
I called immediately. Congratulations, you qualify to be a part of the National Debt Relief Program. I cried. I'm debt-free. Wow, I can't thank National Debt Relief enough.
Find out if you're eligible today. Click the link.
What's going on, guys? It's Ashley with Pickdawgs, and this is Ashley's Edge. It's Tuesday, February 11th. We're talking some basketball today, but before we get into it, as always, if you want a free pick every day, all you have to do is join me right here. Every day, no matter what, I'm giving my viewers free picks and free plays in this same spot. All you gotta do is show up. But if you want the good stuff, you should check out pickdawgs.com and grab a premium package. That's where you'll get my best plays of the day, the best bets, the best valued games. It's how you're going to win money. So give it a try. Check it out, pickdawgs.com, or simply click the link below in the description. And as always, if you like this video, if you love and want to support Pickdawgs, like, comment, and absolutely subscribe to the channel. All right, we're talking a little NBA today. Grizzlies taking on the Suns in this one. Memphis coming off a loss to the Thunder, 112-125. Phoenix also coming off a loss to Denver, 105-122. On the season, Memphis 35-17 straight up, 34-18 against the spread. Phoenix 26-26 straight up, 18-33-1 ATS. And in this game, the Suns are the 2-point home dogs. So Memphis, they are obviously having a great season, currently second in the Western Conference, but they have been lethal against the spread. I mentioned the stat already, but let me just say it again. They are 34-18 against the spread on the season. That leads the league, with only Cleveland and OKC not too far behind. In the recent games, Memphis has played pretty well, 8-2 in their last 10. On the other side, Suns, they've had a pretty not great year, to put it nicely, and they've been struggling as of recently, only 1-4 straight up and against the spread in their last 5 games. Their defense has always been their weak spot, but it's been particularly rough in the last few games. They've allowed an average of 127.4 points per game in their last 5, so that's a little rough for them. Ultimately, the Suns, they are only 12-28-1 against the spread in non-division games this season, while the Grizzlies, they are 7-3 against the spread as away favorites. You know, all the stats are pointing towards Memphis on this one, and ultimately Memphis's offense is just going to be too much for the Suns defense right now. Give me Memphis -2 on the road. And that'll be it for me today. As always, you can find me in the same spot every day, no matter what, giving free picks. But if you want the good stuff, visit pickdawgs.com and grab a premium package today. I hope you have it.
Rose Sparks are better than Viagra. Here's why. Rose Sparks works 2.4 times faster and...
Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pickdawgs, and this is Ron's Bank Shop Breakdown. We're going to go over 5 college basketball games for Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your college basketball picks in the comments section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, the games I love the most, including my top play in college hoops each day, my Bank Shop Best Bet, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab of pickdawgs.com. There's also a link in the description. Alright, here we go. Here are the games for Tuesday in college hoops. First up, we'll start in the Big 12 as Iowa State takes on UCF. This one is going to be 7 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be on ESPN+. Now, we know Iowa State is still ranked 10th in the AP polls, 18-5 overall, 8-4 in conference play. But we can agree that they haven't been their best in the last couple of weeks, as they're now on a 1-3 run in their last 4 games. They were able to bounce back with a win on Saturday, a blowout win, and cover. But before that, they had lost 3 straight by double digits to Arizona, which, you know, it's a very solid team, and it was a true road game. But then the surprising 19-point loss to Kansas State, and then the blowout loss against the Kansas Jayhawks the following game. And right now, I'm not really looking to lay points, especially this many points, with the Cyclones on the road. They've struggled in their recent true road games. UCF has a very underrated home court advantage in this conference. We've already seen it from the Golden Knights in certain games this season. You look back at the very beginning of the year, the upset win over Texas A&M. Texas A&M has been a very good road team. You could argue maybe the best road team in college basketball this year, or one of them. They've had so many big road wins in the SEC. So UCF's win at the beginning of the season looks even more impressive. And I know the Golden Knights are not in the best form right now, but this is still a team. It's a good shooting team from three-point range. That's been an issue for Iowa State at times in conference play and overall. They do give up some points from the perimeter and from three-point jumpers. So if UCF can get those threes falling early, I think their offense does enough to at least cover this number, if not win the game outright. Next up, it's DePaul and Marquette. This one is going to be 8:30 Eastern. It's going to be on Peacock. Now, the first meeting between these two was very close. It went to overtime. DePaul actually had a few chances to win that game. And UCF can get those threes falling early. I think their offense does enough to at least cover this number, if not win the game outright. Next up, it's DePaul and Marquette. This one is going to be 8:30 Eastern. It's going to be on Peacock. Now, the first meeting between these two was very close. It went to overtime. DePaul actually had a few chances to win that game late, but ended up losing by 2 points, 85-83, We know Marquette has struggled recently. They've lost 3 straight games, but I still view this as a get-right spot for Marquette. And while that first game was close, I still think this is a good matchup for Marquette, especially at home. And DePaul's been more competitive in conference play this year than we're used to seeing, but they're still 2-11 in conference play, so they're not having a great season in the Big East by any means, and they've struggled at times against the number, even getting a lot of points like this. I think we see a classic Marquette blowout win. I think they really benefit from the fact that DePaul really turns the ball over too much. About 19% of their possessions have ended in a turnover this year. For Marquette, they're 6th best in the country in defensive turnover percentage, 2nd best on the offensive side. They should win that turnover battle by a big margin, score a lot of fast break points. I think this is going to be a fast game, and I think Marquette scores probably close to into the 90s and wins this game and covers a number. Next up, it's Alabama and Texas. This one's going to be 9 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be on ESPN. I'm looking at the total in this one. I think we see a track meet in this game. I think it's going to be an offensive shootout. I like the over, and Alabama's played in quite a few overs on the road in the SEC this year. The most recent game against Arkansas did go under, but still was a pretty high-scoring game, 85-81, and previously 88-84, 102-97. Some of the road game final scores for Alabama. We know the offense is elite. It's potent. It's the fastest team in college basketball. I do think that defense holds Alabama back, though, especially as we get near the conference tournament play. And, their next game against Auburn into the NCAA tournament when they're playing some of these tougher teams. I worry about that Bama defense. They're ranked 347th in turnover percentage defensively, so they're not forcing turnovers. They're not the best defensive rebounding team, and shot quality-wise, also not the best compared to other SEC teams. So while Texas has struggled, recently, I think we'll see the Longhorns score plenty of points in this game. On the flip side, Texas giving up 86 points to Vanderbilt last time out. If you can give up 86 points to Vandy, Alabama could certainly score in the hundreds or at least the high 90s in this one. So this is a steep total, but I think we see a very high-scoring game, back and forth. I think Texas is going to be forced to play fast in this ball game if it wants to keep up. Give me Alabama and Texas over the total in this one. Next up, it's Colorado and Kansas. This one's going to be 9 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be on ESPN2. Now, I think Kansas bounces back from its most recent outright loss to Kansas State, their rivals, in that one, 81-73. And while I think they bounce back with a win, I don't think they cover the spread, as this is just too many points to be laying. I know Colorado has struggled in conference play. That's putting it lightly, 0-12 in the Big 12 this season. But I think the Buffs are coming off their best performance in conference play this year in that game against Houston. It was a double-digit loss on paper, but it was a really close game. The final score doesn't tell the full story, and Colorado was able to cover the spread easily in that one, never coming outside the number in that game. And I think they can build on a performance like that. That was, like I said, one of their best showings of the conference season. They were 39% from three-point range against a very tough Houston defense, and also holding Houston to 51% from two-point range. That's key for me. Colorado's two-point defense has been inconsistent at times. They've struggled to defend the paint, but that was one of their best showings. We also saw them have 4 blocks in that game. Kansas really relies on those two-point field goals. They score 59% of their points via two-point field goals. So I think Colorado's defense is going to be able to stand up and find a few key stops to be able to cover the number in this game. They're getting a ton of points. I don't think Colorado wins this game outright. I think it could be a little bit dicey for Kansas down the stretch, but I think the Jayhawks win. Colorado covers. And the final game we're going to talk about for the Tuesday card in college basketball, it's going to be a late game, Colorado State and Utah State. This one's 11 p.m. Eastern on Fox Sports 1. Now, we took Colorado State on Saturday. We laid the points against San Diego State. That was a pretty competitive game, but Colorado State got the job done for us nonetheless. Another loss for those Aztecs I mentioned. I don't think they're going to make the tournament. They got to keep racking up losses for that to be the case. But when you look at this matchup, I don't think it's beneficial for Colorado State. When you look at Utah State, very good home team, and they had a really amazing start to the season. They were 10-0 at one point straight up, and they were 16-1, 6-0 in conference play. Since then, I would say they still have a great record, 21-3 overall, 11-2 in conference play. They haven't been as dominant, though, in recent games. We've seen some close ones. The Wyoming game, a little bit concerning. Even last game against Fresno State, winning that game by single digits. You lose the blowout to New Mexico. So we haven't seen the best of the Aggies recently, but still, I think one of the best teams in this conference. A dangerous mid-major, and I think they win this game really comfortably. They match up well. Their offense is just far too superior for Colorado State. And also, I much rather take the Rams at home. Like many other Mountain West teams, I don't really love backing Colorado State on the road. We've seen them lose some lopsided games by double digits in these true road games in the Mountain West. So give me Utah State in this one. I'm going to lay the points. And that's it. Those are the games for Tuesday in college basketball. Hope you enjoy by double digits in these true road games in the Mountain West. So give me Utah State in this one. I'm going to lay the points. And that's it. Those are the games for Tuesday in college basketball. Hope you enjoyed this video. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pickdawgs Premium, and there is a link in the description.
What's up, guys? It's Toad back with you. As always, it's Wednesday, February 11th. 0-1 yesterday. I mean, when you have one bet, it's either going to be a winning day or a losing day. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those days where I look stupid. I thought it was a good letdown spot, good spot to fade Clemson. This North Carolina team, man, I mean, they're hanging in there early, but they just could not get it together. They pretty much got blown out in the game. It just, it's not fun. It sucks. We move on to today. We got a big college basketball slate. I got 5 college basketball plays, all in the big conferences today because I can't help myself. I like these spots. The market has actually moved on all of them in the direction that I agree with, which sucks because I already agreed with those. So if I'd gotten to them last night, I probably would have gotten some better numbers on them. But what can you do? So giving up a little bit of line value on all of them, which I don't know. It's a little bit taboo, I guess. It's something you shouldn't be doing. But I'm a situational guy, man. I like the situations on these. I at least have market agreement on them. So hopefully most of them get there. I have one NBA play on the small NBA card as well. There's one side that I like there too. Let's talk about this. College basketball, there's a huge card here. Auburn is at Vandy to kick this thing off on SEC Network. Auburn has remained the number 1 team, which did not surprise me. Their resume is just so good that they can withstand a loss to another good team like Florida. I expected Alabama to jump up into the 2 spot, which they did. And then I really thought that 3 and 4 would be Duke, Tennessee, or Tennessee, Duke. It would be one of those, like those 2 teams would be 3 and 4 one way or the other, and that Florida would be 5. But Florida moved all the way up to 3, which is crazy. Anyway, Auburn is at, what did I say? Where's Auburn at? They're at Vandy. Yeah, Auburn's down from 9.5 to 9, so there's a little bit of movement against Auburn. Both of these teams like to play fast, so it's not going to really be a huge tempo situation. Vandy plays faster than Auburn does. We know Auburn is the better team, but in this spot, I don't know, man, because Auburn's in a spot that could be a hangover spot, a spot where you lose the game twice. When you have a team that's rolling and they have no conference losses, which was the case with Auburn. Auburn's only loss prior to that was, I believe, was to Duke way back in the early season in non-conference play. So they were rolling. They hadn't lost for a long time, so they're not used to this. They just lost their undefeated SEC status to a good team, a game that you get up for emotionally at the very least, even though they did lose as a home favorite. A lot of times when a team loses as a home favorite, you want to look for them to bounce back in the next game. But in a situation like Auburn is, where they hadn't lost like at all for so long, I think it is more likely to be a hangover spot. So I agree with this line move. I would, if I was going to play this game, which I'm not, I would look to take the points with Vanderbilt, which I am not going to do it. I'm going to stay away from this one, but that is the way that I would lean. Vandy is coming off a nice home win over Texas, but they have been pretty good at home. I mean, they beat Texas, Kentucky, Tennessee, South Carolina. They did lose to Mississippi State at home, which is, I believe, their only conference home loss. So they've been pretty tough at home. They have kind of a weird home arena where the crowd is like below the floor, even though they're not as close to you as they are in Minnesota. I would look to take the points with Vanderbilt, which I am not going to do it. I'm going to stay away from this one, but that is the way that I would lean. Vandy is coming off a nice home win over Texas, but they have been pretty good at home. I mean, they beat Texas, Kentucky, Tennessee, South Carolina. They did lose to Mississippi State at home, which is, I believe, their only conference home loss. So they've been pretty tough at home. They have kind of a weird home arena where the crowd is like below the floor, even though they're not as close to you as they are in Minnesota, who has kind of a similar setup. But yeah, that's the way I look there. The next game up, number 3, Florida, number 22, Mississippi State on ESPN2, The Deuce at also 7 p.m. I am going to play this one. You know what I do, man. This is another letdown spot, as we know. I'm going to grab the points of Mississippi State plus 1.5, even though, as we see, this line has dropped a bit. Florida down from 3 to 2 with juice. You might be able to get 2 on this, but it looks like the market read is definitely in agreement with me on Mississippi State. 70% of the tickets are on Florida. 58% of the cash, though, on Mississippi State. And you know the public is only going to come in one way on this, man. Florida is the hot commodity right now. They're the team of the week, basically, the hype team of the week. We know what they just did. They just went into Auburn, won as like 9-point underdogs at Auburn, monster win. Now they have a second straight road game, which is usually not the greatest spot. I'd like this even better if they had a big game up next, although they don't, except they did only beat South Carolina by 1 the last time, so maybe they will have a little bit of an eye on that. But Mississippi State, they're getting Mississippi State in a pretty difficult spot, man. I mean, Florida coming off their win of the season, basically. And now, as I mentioned, Florida is up to being a 1 seed in the bracketologies now. So they got to be feeling pretty good about themselves, pretty high about themselves with that fairly decisive win on the road at Auburn. Now they got to go to Mississippi State, and the public has got to be thinking, well, if Florida can win on the road against Auburn, and you're just asking me to pick the winner here, basically. Obviously, they're going to beat Mississippi State, right? So it looks way too easy to play Florida in this game, and it doesn't work like that, man. The books are not throwing money away. Like I say, Mississippi State's coming off barely beating Georgia on the road, which was a game where Georgia was actually the favorite. So it was a tough game. I mean, Georgia is not a bad team. Mississippi State did have the lead for most of the game. It was close. So they did have to win that game, in a full effort, basically. But now they're coming back home. They got Florida coming into their place, man. They're not going to overlook Florida. And Mississippi State has not been good at home the last couple of games. They got blown out by Missouri. But I think part of that was because they were coming off a tough effort against Alabama the game before that. So they were coming off a big game where they hung within 4 of Alabama. So I disagreed with the line movement on this one against Missouri. The line movement went towards Mississippi State, and I didn't agree with that one, and I was right on that one. I believe that was the case. But now Mississippi State, they're back at home. When you get a team that comes back home and they have been playing badly at home the last couple of games, that tends to be a little bit of an extra motivator as well to get back on the winning side at home after, especially when your last home game was an embarrassing loss. I don't care if it was to Missouri, who's pretty good. It was a 27-point loss on your own floor. I mean, that's pretty unacceptable, even though I know they do have Ole Miss up next. But again, you're not going to overlook Florida. They did already beat Ole Miss once. So I think this is a good Mississippi State. And prior to those 2 losses, they were 2-1 at home, at least, which is a little bit better, with their loss being against Kentucky, 2-1 in conference play at home. So that's not that bad. The market read looks like it's definitely in agreement with me. And the other thing I like about this is that Florida likes to play super fast, and Mississippi State likes to play they're like in the slowest third of teams tempo-wise. So Mississippi State may be able to get this into an ugly half-court game, which is not what Florida's style is. And you're actually getting a point or two with Mississippi State here as the team that wants to slow the game down. So I like that as well. Mississippi State, I mean, they're not the better defensive team. I can't say that, even though Florida speeds it up. Florida's actually a top 10 offensive and defensive team. So Mississippi State's not that. Mississippi State's actually worse defensively. They're actually a good, efficient scoring team, but they slow the game down, man. This is a spot, even though I know Florida obviously is the better team, this is a spot play. I think Mississippi State is the right side to play in that one. Market agreement on it. Let's move on. Tennessee, number 5 at number 15, Kentucky. I got to play in this one too. Dude, I have plays in the first 3 of these 4 games, and I was thinking, like, am I not being selective enough? But then I got super selective with the rest of the games. I think it just is the way that it is. It's just the way my mind works, man. Number 5, Tennessee at number 15, Kentucky. Everybody knows Tennessee is the better team, but that is the way that I'm going in this one. Tennessee minus 2.5. The line is up a little bit. It's up from 1.5 to now 3 with juice. So this one, I mean, hopefully the line doesn't get too far away from you, or hopefully it starts dropping a little bit back down. The books kind of had this number all over the place, 2.5, 3. You could go to Tennessee money line if you wanted to. I would not blame you if you wanted to do that. I think Tennessee is in a decent spot where they should win this game. 70% of tickets, 71% of the cash on Kentucky, but I don't think they are getting more of the cash percentage. The line moving up on Tennessee tells you there is significant money on the Tennessee side right now, and I don't think that that's a false line move because I do agree with the situation that Tennessee is in. So Kentucky may shape up to be a home underdog. A public home underdog. And why would the public want to take Kentucky, who's the lesser ranked team? Well, I think because they look at this and they think this is going to be a competitive game, and they're going to look at this and say, well, wait a minute. Kentucky went in and beat Tennessee at Tennessee, and you're giving me points now at home with Kentucky? Of course Kentucky's going to win this game, right? Again, not so fast. It doesn't work like that. Tennessee is definitely the better team. And Kentucky, yeah, I know they're staying at home. They're playing Tennessee, which is a big game, but again, they already beat Tennessee on the road, so I think that's going to be a big motivator for the Tennessee side. And Kentucky's coming off this very satisfying win against South Carolina. I know South Carolina's bad, and they haven't even won in conference, but if you beat anybody 80-57, you're going to be feeling probably a little bit cocky, and now you're facing a Tennessee team who you already beat on their floor. You're probably feeling pretty confident right now, man, if you're this Kentucky team. But I think they're in for a rude awakening here against this Tennessee team that is a better team than they are. Tennessee, I know it's their second straight road game, and I don't love teams on their second straight road game. They really did not put in a game where they had to really go to like the wire or anything for a full effort at Oklahoma. I actually thought that was a bad spot for Tennessee, and they still blew out Oklahoma, even though it was sandwiched in between three ranked teams. So that shows me something at Tennessee. If they can do that in a bad spot, they're a pretty good team, man. So now I think they're going to show up in this game. If you're Tennessee, you must have this game circled, man. I mean, this Kentucky team, I believe they're the only team that went into Tennessee's place and beat them on their own floor, maybe this entire season, not just in conference play. Because Tennessee's other losses are at Florida, at Vandy, and at Auburn. Yeah, so Kentucky is the only team that's come into their house and beaten them on their floor. So you know Tennessee has this circled. And I played Kentucky in that game because Tennessee was off that Auburn game where they only lost by 2. And they had Florida up next, which was a huge game. And it was also a revenge game because Florida had embarrassed them completely the last time they played them. So I thought that was a great spot to play Kentucky. Now I'm going to say the tables have turned, and Tennessee wants to get right here. They want to get their road revenge. In-season road revenge is a strong angle, and Tennessee is the better of the two teams here, and they're the way better defensive team. I mean, that's what's going on here. Kentucky, sure, they can score. Tennessee is not a great offensive team, but they are number 1 in the country in defensive efficiency, according to Kenpom. Excellent defensively, even though Kentucky's 2 in offensive efficiency. There's a reason why they have 7 losses, man, and that's this. 90th in defensive efficiency. Not good. I know Kentucky does like to play really fast, and Tennessee does not at all. Tennessee plays ridiculously slow. So, yes, the home team usually does control the pace, but in a game like this where Tennessee is the better team and they like to play the slow down, I think they may be able to slow the pace of the game down, even if they are the road team. It's easier to slow it down, and when you're the better team, it's easier for you to have control of the pace of the game, even if you are on the road. But it's definitely easier to slow it down than to speed it up, because you have possession of the ball, you can kind of control what you're doing, you can slow it down. Whereas if you speed it up, you're worried about turnovers and stuff, but if you slow down into the half court, there isn't a whole lot that the defense can do to try to get you out of that unless they start full court pressing you the whole time. And then what you're going to see is like, tired legs and stuff. So I'm going to be on Tennessee. Give me that one. That might be the weakest of all 4, but I do like that one as well. Next up, I said I have another play in the next game, and I do. 7 Purdue at 20 Michigan. This is a game where I'm on Michigan at -1.5. Michigan, the line looked like it was moving up on Michigan. Let's see. And this is also a revenge game in conference. Let's see. Michigan up from Pick'em to 1.5 with juice. 57% of tickets, 83% of the cash. Money coming in on the Michigan side. I am in total agreement with that, of course. Purdue, I don't think this is the greatest spot for them, man. They already played Michigan, and they absolutely wrecked them. And I know this isn't a road revenge angle, but Purdue beat them on their home floor at Purdue by whatever that is, 27 points, 91-64. One of Michigan's most embarrassing losses on the season. So I think Michigan is going to be the team that has the adjustments to make here. And that was one of their worst losses of the season. Terrible loss. Purdue might be thinking this is going to be a little bit easy to beat Michigan. Who does Purdue have up next? They got Wisconsin and then Michigan State, and they might consider those to be bigger games than Michigan because they already annihilated Michigan. And Wisconsin and Michigan State are both higher ranked, and they haven't faced either of those teams yet. So those are going to be big games for Purdue. Yes, Purdue is the better team, but in this spot, I'm not so sure about that. Yes, Purdue has been pretty good on the road, I know, but Michigan's going to be one of the best teams that they've had to face on the road. I think Michigan is better than Minnesota, Rutgers, Nebraska. I think they're better than Oregon. Oregon was ranked for a while, but I think Michigan probably is better than they are. And then Michigan's better than Iowa, too. So Michigan is going to be the best team that Purdue has faced in road play, in conference play so far. So it's not going to be easy. Again, the market read, the money's coming in. I know the market's shifting all over the place. Money is coming in agreement with me on Michigan here. It's a revenge angle, like I said. And from Michigan, they're coming off that win against Indiana, which was not a great performance from Michigan. I played Indiana for many reasons there. I thought Michigan was going to be kind of sandwiched in there between a big win over Oregon and this game against Purdue. And Indiana was, going through the coach resignment spot. But I'll talk about Indiana in a little bit, actually, because I think that's going to be a negative for a little while moving forward. Mostly negatives on the Indiana side, but Michigan didn't play the greatest game at Indiana. I know I only covered because Indiana hit a half-court shot at the buzzer that was totally meaningless as far as the game outcome was concerned, but I'll take it, man. If you're going to push my bet on that, that's fine. So Michigan didn't play well, and they got this game. They have this game circled because in their last 6 games, their only loss was to this Purdue team, and that was this embarrassing loss. This Michigan team is good, man, and they're well coached. No longer Juwan Howard there, man, who's assaulting Wisconsin coaches in the handshake line or whatever. That's not what you got now. You got Dusty May. I like what I'm hearing out of Dusty May. I think he's a good coach. He was the one who was he took Florida Atlantic to the Final Four a couple of years ago, and I believe he was at Florida Atlantic last year. There he is, actually. I kind of like Dusty May. I think he's good. He's turning it around for Michigan here. There he is. I love being at Michigan because they asked him if he wants to coach at Indiana after they just played him. It's crazy. It was crazy, man. At the end of that Indiana game, Woodson, for Indiana, he refused to address the press and even answer questions about his resignment or why he resigned, like what he's going to do for the rest of the season while he's still coaching. I mean, it's just a ridiculous situation. And Dusty May spoke to the press about the Indiana situation, and Mike Woodson refused to do it. It's so crazy, man. I don't like what's going on with Indiana there. It's a mess there. It's a better situation in Michigan. This Michigan team that have been pretty lackluster the last couple of years with Juwan Howard, they're a pretty good team this year, man, and I think they're being a bit overlooked here. This is a good spot to take them. Purdue also likes to play way slow, and Michigan likes to speed the game up. And Michigan's actually pretty good defensively, surprisingly. They're almost top 20 in both offense and defense. Kenpom has them right at 20th in the country. Purdue definitely likes to slow the game down, and Michigan is actually the better defense out of the two, and you're basically going to pick the winner situation here. And they like to play fast, so a weird combo of fast and better defense. Purdue does not want to play that way, and if Michigan's able to speed this game up, which might be more easy to do at home, it's going to throw Purdue out of the style of game that they want. Michigan can go head-to-head with them as far as the defense is concerned. Even though Purdue is a very efficient shooting team, Michigan can definitely contest them. And Michigan's actually not even bad offensively either, like I said. So, very balanced team. Scoreboard, thank you, sir. I feel like I'm kind of all over the place, though, man. I feel like I'm just kind of, I don't know, I'm not very seamless. I'm just weaving all over the place. But Michigan is the play in that one. All right. I'm not going to talk about every single one of these games. Iowa State only laying 7.5 at UCF. Looks weird, right? 71% of tickets, 77% of the cash on Iowa State. Iowa State's definitely the better team. I mean, they were one of the 1 seeds for a while, and they've kind of started slipping. They lost 4 games in the mix. They actually lost 3 in a row until they finally got right against TCU. Now they got UCF, who they already beat pretty easily at home. So it is possible Iowa State overlooks UCF a little bit here, and UCF is still kind of considered to be a bubble team, and they need statement wins. So UCF may be going all out to try to get this game, although I know they've lost 4 games in a row now, and they did lose their last 2 games on this floor, which I do think that's a little bit of an extra motivator as well. When you come back home and you lost your last 2 home games, you're going to want to perform better than that. And with one of the top 10 teams in the country, ranking-wise, and I still think Iowa State is a top 10 team, UCF may very well be the more focused team in that one. And the line does look a little bit short. Almost looks too easy to play Iowa State there. So I would lean slightly to UCF, but that one is not a play. Let's see. You got MAC teams returning to MAC play after they all played against Sun Belt teams. The one game that caught my eye the most here, most of the MAC teams actually beat the Sun Belt teams, by the way. I think the MAC won the MAC Sun Belt Challenge. The one game that would have my eye a little bit would be Kent State, and I would lean towards fading them. Kent State just beat Arkansas State, man. Arkansas State is the best team in the Sun Belt, and they like to play really fast, and Kent State likes to play way slow. So now Kent State's coming off that. That's a big game. They got Central Michigan kind of sandwiched in here, really, up against Ohio, who they lost to. So their only conference losses in the last few games are Ohio and Akron, and those are both Ohio rivals as well. So I think they may just overlook Central Michigan in this spot, man. Central Michigan is a little bit under the radar, too. Kenpom has them pretty low in the luck index, so Kenpom has them underperforming so far. And between this big win over Arkansas State, beating the class of the Sun Belt, and then you got revenge against your in-state rival in Ohio up next, who's right above you in the standings. I don't love the spot for Kent State, and they're laying points, and they're a slow-down team, and Central Michigan is also a slow-down team. So I would lean to taking the points with Central Michigan. The line looks to be in agreement with that as well, down from 9 to 7.5. Not a play for me, but I do lean to Central Michigan plus the points. Arizona at Kansas State, this one's a little bit unfortunate because my instinct would be I want to go against Kansas State. I had them on Saturday, and what did they do? They pulled off this massive upset. Well, not massive, only 4.5-point upset. Kansas State is not as bad as they look, man, and now they're starting to play better. They've won 5 games in a row, but they beat Kansas, man. I mean, that's their in-state rival. It was in-season revenge as well. I mean, that's a huge, huge win for Kansas State this year, man. Now, they got Arizona coming in, so normally I would say, well, I want to fade Kansas State off of that because that was a huge win. But when you got another ranked team coming in Arizona, and what did Arizona do in their last game? I had them on Saturday as well. They were in a pretty decent spot, I thought, and they beat Texas Tech. That was a big win as well. Now they're having to play Kansas State, and they got Houston up in 4 days. That's a big game, man. They might be very well looking ahead to Houston. So this is a sandwich spot for Arizona, and it's a letdown spot for Kansas State. So there's no way that I can play the side in this game. Both teams are in spots where I'd look to fade them. The market looks like it's indicating on Kansas State plus the points. Arizona down from 3.5 to 3. 50% of the tickets are evenly split. 56% of the cash coming in on K-State. So like I said, the market read looks like it is on Kansas State here. Kansas State does play a bit slower, kind of in the slower, almost in the slower third of teams, and Arizona State likes to speed it up. So you're getting the slow-down team getting points at home. That doesn't look that bad to me usually. It's just that I don't want to play Kansas State off of that monster win, but they may very well step up for this game too, especially because they want to pad their resume, and they might think that, hey, on this run that we're on, maybe we can actually take a shot at trying to get into the tournament field if we can continue to do this. If we can beat Arizona, who knows? So I don't think Kansas State's going to not show up for this one, and Arizona may actually be the less likely team to be focused here as they're in that weird sandwich spot there. So those are my thoughts on that. George Mason St. Louis is a pretty big A10 game. George Mason is the better team, and they're laying points here, and they've actually step up for this game too, especially because they want to pad their resume, and they might think that, hey, on this run that we're on, maybe we can actually take a shot at trying to get into the tournament field if we can continue to do this. If we can beat Arizona, who knows? So I don't think Kansas State's going to not show up for this one, and Arizona may actually be the less likely team to be focused here as they're in that weird sandwich spot there. So those are my thoughts on that. George Mason St. Louis is a pretty big A10 game. George Mason is the better team, and they're laying points here. They've actually flipped from a 1-point dog to a 1-point favorite, so they're laying points on the road here, but I don't know that I agree with it. George Mason, like I said, I don't think they're actually the best team in the A-10. I think VCU, probably Dayton. I think those two teams are probably better than George Mason. George Mason is just on a roll, though. They've only lost one conference game, barely, on the road to Rhode Island. The road to Rhode Island. Isn't that a Family Guy episode? We're on the road to Rhode Island. I'm pretty sure it is, right? One of those Stewie and Brian travel episodes. So, yeah, they lost on the road to Rhode Island. They got their revenge against Rhode Island, which is a pretty big win, really. Stomping Rhode Island to deal payback to the only team that had beaten them. That was a decent spot to play George Mason, I guess. I actually overlooked that one when I was trying to handicap everything. But now they're going on the road to St. Louis, who I believe they haven't played yet this year. Is that right? I think they only played them in this one game. I just don't love the spot that they're in right now for that big revenge game. They do have St. Joe's and VCU up next, even though St. Louis is the team that's closest to them, right behind them. But they got padding, even though they're trying to stay ahead of VCU. But I think St. Louis might be in the better spot here to play a better game. St. Louis, they're coming off that ugly performance against St. Joe's, where I played St. Joe's in that game because St. Louis was playing a second straight road game. I thought they might be looking ahead to this George Mason game. And they had lost to Dayton prior to this win against UMass, where they barely won, and they beat VCU the game before the Dayton one. So that UMass game, I think, was sandwiched in there, and that's why they didn't play well. And then they had this big game against St. Joe's, and they just didn't do well. But now they're coming back home, and they lost on this floor the last time they were there against Dayton in that big Friday night game where I actually played Dayton in that game. I liked Dayton in that one. I think St. Louis may be in a spot where they're going to bounce back here after that pretty ugly loss and having lost their last game on this floor and really having played 3 games in a row where they played pretty poorly. So I would lean to St. Louis if I was going to play that one, although I'm not going to play it. The market seems to be shifting a little bit against it, but we will see. UCLA and Illinois, the battle of the teams that dropped from the rankings here in this one. This one is hard for me to figure out, too, because on the one hand, UCLA going out on the road to an unfamiliar venue like Illinois. I mean, UCLA is new to this conference, so they're not used to going out to, Champlain, Illinois, and they're coming off a couple of big wins, man. I mean, UCLA beat Oregon, who was ranked at the time. Then they beat Michigan State, which was really like a win of the year type of win there against a team that basically hadn't even lost in conference yet, I think. Huge win for UCLA. All 3 of these games were at home, and then they didn't suffer the letdown, and I got caught trying to grab the points with Penn State there. UCLA was able to cover that one, not by much. I had plus 10.5, so I only missed by like 3 or 4 points there. UCLA with that win, but now they're going back out on the road, and on the road's a different story, man. I mean, they did win at Washington and USC, but those are Pac-12 teams, so when they've played teams that they're unfamiliar with, when they've gone to these unfamiliar venues, in this new environment of the Big Ten, they have not done well. They lost at Nebraska, at Maryland, and at Rutgers, so I believe they're 0-3. And they lost every one of these games by 7 or more, it looks like. So in these road games in the Big 12, the only road games they've won in the Big 12 are the ones against teams that were in the Pac-12 with them, in the familiar venues. So, I keep saying Big 12, Big 10, the Big 10. So when they played the teams that have been in the Big Ten for a while, the old school Big Ten teams, if you want to call it that, you know what I'm saying. Teams that were already in the Big Ten, when they've gone to those places, they're 0-3, and they've lost by 7, 8, and 18 in those 3 games. So they have not performed well in those games. That makes this a spot that looks pretty enticing for Illinois, but I got to stay away from it because Illinois, even though, they're probably going to be focused. This is a big game against UCLA. Illinois has not been playing well. They did just get a win over Minnesota, which is going to maybe help them get right a little bit. Illinois has started kind of sliding a little bit, but I don't think you can blame them for most of these losses. I mean, that one against USC was definitely bad, but losing by 2 at Michigan State, you can't blame them for that. Maryland, I won't blame them for losing, but they did lose pretty badly on their own floor to Maryland, but Maryland is good. But so losing to Maryland in general, I wouldn't knock them that much for it. And then on the road at Nebraska, that's not easy to go there and beat Nebraska. And then on the road at Rutgers, I don't know, man. I mean, Rutgers is not that good, so I don't know. That one doesn't look great either. But Illinois bounced back, and maybe they will be focused because UCLA is still a named team, and they got a good record. And Illinois, has started slipping a little bit, and they want to get back into the rankings, so they may still very well have focus in this one. And UCLA is above them, but they do have a big couple of games coming up, man. They got Michigan State and revenge up next. Then they got Wisconsin and then Duke. So they have 3 big games in a row coming up after this. So will they actually be looking ahead and overlook UCLA? I don't know. That is the question that you have to try to figure out. That's why I'm not playing this game, because on the surface at first, because of UCLA's bad play in these Big Ten venues, it looks like the side would be Illinois. I would still lean that way. My guess would be that they don't overlook this game. But we will see. Illinois up from 5 to 5.5 with juice. 60% of tickets, 64% of the cash coming in on Illinois. So the market read is on the Illinois side. Again, I do slightly agree with that. I don't disagree with it. The one other thing I will say, if you do like Illinois, is that UCLA likes to play really slow and Illinois likes to play really fast. And if Illinois is able to control the pace, that's going to throw UCLA out of the style of game that they want to play. So there is that advantage to Illinois there as well. SEMO, Southeast Missouri State and Little Rock, is going to wind up being a pretty good game in the Ohio Valley. Even though it's a bad conference, these are 2 of the top teams in the conference. SEMO has been on a roll, man. They've won 5 games in a row, 6 of their last 7. They've been rolling. They absolutely annihilated Morehead State, who was the class of this conference for a while. Now Morehead State taking a little bit of a step back this year and probably not the best team this year. That was revenge for SEMO as well. Road revenge, because SEMO lost at home to Morehead. Now they're facing a 3rd straight road game. I should have played Southern Indiana in the middle here. Southern Indiana, that was a huge sandwich spot for SEMO, but actually SEMO covered. Never mind. Maybe I shouldn't have then. The line was only 3.5 there, but that was a sandwich spot. They didn't play that great, but now 3rd straight road game going to Little Rock. It's a little bit iffy, although I might still lean to SEMO because they didn't play that well in that game against Southern Indiana, and that was because it was sandwiched in between these 2 bigger games. And speaking of Morehead, if you want more Morehead, or if you want Morehead, yeah, why not? Who doesn't? Little Rock, they just beat Morehead as well on the road, and that was road revenge for them as well. I mentioned that over the weekend. I liked Little Rock in that game. Maybe I should have played them and UNLV, man. I liked those road revenge spots. Those both got there. Little Rock had lost earlier in the season at home to Morehead. They got their revenge against Morehead. So I think this is a little bit of a more difficult spot for them facing SEMO. Oh, and by the way, speaking of road revenge, this is road revenge for SEMO because Little Rock beat them by 2 at their place earlier this year. So all of that being said, Little Rock coming off a big performance, big game, big road win and revenge. SEMO is the team that's in revenge now, and SEMO's coming off a little bit of a worse performance. That's the way that I would lean in this one, to grabbing the points with SEMO. Little Rock is down a little bit from 5.5 to 5.5 with reduced juice. So if I was going to play this, yeah, I would take the points with Southeast Missouri State. I'm not going to quite get there with it. I don't love playing teams in 3rd straight road games, but that is the way I would look. Andrew, what's up, man? Good morning. Thanks for hanging out, man. Yeah, I had a better night than Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, that's for sure. 5-0 sweep of the Super Bowl props, man. Although my Sunday wasn't huge because I only went 1-2 in college basketball thanks to Maryland missing by a half point, or maybe me not getting a better number, because I think maybe I could have gotten the number that would have pushed on that. Maryland should have covered that, though. So I had a winning day from the Super Bowl because I went 5-0 and all the props, but it was a small-ish winning day because college basketball didn't really go my way. College basketball has just been awful for me this year. I apologize. And, of course, most of my games today are college basketball. I mean, it's the sport that's being played, so what can I do? I mean, this is what I have to work with here. And then, of course, I lost yesterday. I had one play yesterday and lost that, but what can you do? All right, next up, I'm going to talk about the second to last play that I have is, wait, did I skip one? No, I did not. Texas +3. I have a play on this one. This looks way too easy to play Alabama, man. Alabama's up to number 2 in the country. And the line is basically, it's getting close to pick the winner territory. It is down from 5 to 3, so the number has moved a bit. I know I could have gotten a little bit of a better number, unfortunately. 79% of tickets, 87% of the cash on Alabama right now, but I don't know that the cash is really coming in on Alabama because the line has dropped a little bit, and I do not like the spot for Alabama. Alabama, again, they're up to number 2 in the country. Not only that, but one of the reasons why I think they are number 2 in the country, even though I they probably deserve it. Even though I think they're probably more like a top several team. I don't think they're actually the second best team in the entire country. But I think one of the reasons the odds makers did that, or the rankings makers, excuse me, the guys who do the rankings, the AP or whatever, I think one of the reasons that put them over the top as far as, we're going to make Alabama number 2, was because it sets up this huge ESPN college game day game on Saturday between Alabama and Auburn. Is that Saturday? I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. I believe it's Saturday. That is going to be a huge game on ESPN between number 1 and number 2, and it's the basketball edition of the Iron Bowl. Those two teams hate each other, man. Auburn and Alabama. They're both in Alabama, in-state rival. So that is a huge game, and what I'm saying is this is a look-ahead spot for Alabama. I mean, they're rolling right now. They won a bunch of games in a row. I am aware of that. They're playing a second straight road game here, though, and they got that huge 1-2 matchup against Auburn next, man. And speaking of Auburn may have a little bit of a look-ahead spot to that as well, which I don't remember if I mentioned that or not, but I think that is Auburn's next game as well. So Auburn, in today's game, may have a little bit of a look-ahead to that as well. So that is why I leaned slightly to Vandy. But for Texas, I'm going to jump in on them, man. I think this is a massive look-ahead spot. I think the line looks very strange. Like, why would Alabama only be laying 3 against this Texas team that's kind of mediocre? Alabama, I mean, they've been good in conference play. There's not much to knock here in conference play. Their one loss is actually at home, so they haven't even lost on the road. Does that worry me? I don't know, because the road games, they haven't really won them by margin, except for South Carolina. But South Carolina's the worst team in the conference. They beat them by 20, but then Texas A&M, they beat by 6, Kentucky by 5, and Mississippi State by 4. So they have not won these games by huge margins, even though I know they don't need to win. Oh, and Arkansas by 4 in their last game. I know they don't need to win by a huge margin here, but they have been winning close games in these road games, man. So that's one thing. And the other thing about this, even though I know you can say the same thing about Texas A&M and Mississippi State, is that Texas is a slow-paced team. So that may help. If you're getting the slow-paced team as the home underdog, I like that as a situation. Alabama likes to play fast. Texas is going to try to slow them down. So I like all that as well. Alabama, Kenpom, where does he have them? He has them 6th in the country. And he has them not that great defensively. They're very good offensively. They're the first team in tempo, so they're number 1 in the country as far as how fast they like to play, but 40th in defense. They do still suffer a bit defensively, even though they've gotten a little bit better defensively than they were the last couple of years, but that's still not that great. So Texas is actually almost as good as they are defensively. Texas is not good offensively, but Texas is also down at 315th in luck, whereas Alabama's 41st. So Kenpom is telling you Texas is not as bad as they appear. Down at 32, that's not that bad. And that Alabama may be a little bit better than you think they are right now. Both teams have faced fairly difficult schedules. At Texas, 206th in tempo, so Texas likes to slow it down. They're actually top 50 in both offense and defense at the very least, even though both teams are. But Texas is very close to what Alabama is able to do defensively. So you could get Texas playing a little bit of defense here. You're getting points at home. It's a bad spot for Alabama. And Texas likes to slow it down. And Texas, they're coming off 2 bad performances in a row, man. They've lost 3 of their last 4, but 2 of the 3 were on the road. So I don't know if you can really blame them for those road losses. And maybe they were looking ahead to Alabama in that game against Vandy. But Texas, their last home game, they were a favorite against Arkansas, and Arkansas was in a bad spot, so maybe you could argue that's a red flag. I laid the points with Texas in that one. Of course, I lost that game, but that was Texas' last home game, and they lost on the road. So I think Texas is definitely going to be in a bounce-back spot. It's going to be a spot where they are going to show up for this one. I mean, they played really bad in their last home game and lost as a pretty substantial favorite. So I don't think they're going to want to let that stand, man. Like I said, when teams return home in college basketball and they didn't play well the last time they were on this floor, they tend to play even a bit better. So I like Texas in that one. Do I want to go through the rest of these games? I do have one more play here and one in the NBA. Let me just see. What's the deal with Georgia here? Georgia at Texas A&M. A&M up from 7.5 to 8 in this one. I mean, Georgia's coming off a close call against, who did they play? They played close against somebody the other day. against Mississippi State, and now they're going out on the road to face A&M. Doesn't look like the greatest spot for Georgia to me. Georgia, I know they need wins, though, because they're now like a bubble team, whereas they were pretty securely in the tournament for a while, but now they're not. But Texas A&M's coming off a big road win at Missouri, and now they're coming back home, so they're off of actually an even bigger game than Georgia is. So maybe Texas A&M in a little bit of the worst spot. So maybe a situation where maybe you do want to look to grab the points with Georgia. As Texas A&M is now up to 8th in the country. They're borderline. I think they might be a 2 seed in some of the bracketologies now. So maybe you do want to look to fade A&M. Indiana at Michigan State. Again, I would not want to touch Indiana right now, man, with the way that that's going with Woodson, not even wanting to address the press. A lot of times when a coach, like with Long Beach State last year, the coach got fired, but he stayed the rest of the season, and that actually sparked the team to actually win their conference and get into the tournament. But with Indiana, when they have a coach who just says, I'm going to resign, and then he's not even talking to the press, and he's had bad body language all year, like looking like a sad sack. Like, I don't want to have anything to do with Indiana, man. Coming off that fairly close call against Michigan, now they have to go to Michigan State. Michigan State's a very formidable opponent. Michigan State just got that bounce back win over Oregon. I know that was a big game, though, and they do have a bigger game up next against Illinois, so maybe they won't totally have focus on Indiana, but there's no way I would want to touch Indiana here. Michigan State just sitting at an 11-point favorite. I don't know what I would do with this game other than obviously I'm not going to touch it, but I figured I would talk about it. And then my last play is going to be to grab the points with Connecticut, as they have actually dropped from the rankings. And they swap places with Creighton, basically, as Creighton is up in the rankings now. UConn dropped from the rankings. Creighton is down from 4.5 to 3 in this one with 88% of tickets and only 87% of the cash. So Creighton looking very public, even though they're up against the returning champs. And the odds makers are telling you there's not much of a difference between these two teams. Creighton, only a slightly better team. Creighton is on fire right now, and I know it's a difficult venue to have to go to, and I know UConn just lost a big game to St. John's, but I think the spot that Creighton is in is even worse than that. UConn already lost at home to Creighton, so it's road revenge for UConn here. So that's one angle that I like to look at, especially road revenge getting points. It's a good spot to look for. And then Creighton, they just beat Marquette, man. That was a huge win. That was the last of the teams that they hadn't beaten in the Big East. They already beat this UConn team on the road. They already had beaten St. John's. And by the way, they got St. John's up next, even though they did already beat them once by 1. This is now a sandwich spot because they're coming off the win over Marquette. So they completed getting wins against all 3 of the other big teams in the conference. And with St. John's up next, having already beaten UConn on the road, I actually think this is a sandwich spot. It's a bad spot for Creighton, and yes, I know Creighton is at home, and they like to speed the game up. UConn likes to play really, really slow, and UConn's defense has actually been really bad this year, although their offense has actually been really efficient. But if UConn is able to slow this down, even though they are on the road, it might be a little bit easier for them to slow the game down on the road. They may be able to hang in this game. And again, I think the rankings have gone a little bit too far in both directions here, whereas I don't know if Creighton is really a top 25. Kenpom has them outside the top 25, and he has UConn right behind them. So, and lower, significantly lower in the luck index as well than Creighton. So he's telling you there's not much of a difference between the two. That is also what the odds makers are telling you. I think that's all I'll talk about here in this one. I don't know if there's that much of an interest in the rest of these games here. Colorado State and Utah State will be a big game in the Mountain West. Utah State's like a 5 or 6 point favorite there. You do tend to want to look to home teams in the Mountain West, so we'll see. I think Colorado State did just come off a big win over San Diego State, I want to say, so they may not be in the greatest spot there. Now we go to NBA. I'll just talk about the one play that I have before I get out of here, and that is the New York Knicks minus 1.5. That's my only NBA play in this pretty bad NBA card, really. Knicks are up from 1 to 2.5 now, so this line is moving fast. 68% of the cash on them, 79% of tickets on the Pacers. Public coming in on Indiana, and I'm not going to buy that. I'm going to lay the points on the road with the Knicks. Maybe there's some injuries with the Pacers, but the Knicks are the way better defensive team. I think they're the better team, and the Pacers are in the worst spot here. Pacers are returning home from a road trip. They've been away for more than a week, so you know when a team returns home from a road trip, I always say it tends to be a bit of a distraction, even though they are playing a good Knicks team here. They've had a couple of days off, but still, you tend to get distracted by having to do stuff around the house, having to get stuff done at home. It is a bit of a distraction. They did play a big game against the Lakers, and they made a comeback and kind of were in that game late in the game. Now they're playing the Knicks. I know the Knicks are good, but the Knicks are coming off this real ugly loss to the Celtics, and I don't think that's a type of game that's going to put them in a hangover spot. They have a couple of days off as well, and they're going out on the road, so they get to get out of home, not listen to the press, go out on the road and face this Indiana team who's the way worse of the two teams defensively at the very least. I think it's a good spot for the Knicks to get this one. You lose by almost 30 to anybody, even though I know it was Boston. I know it was a game where the Knicks get up for that, but Boston has beat them most of the time in the last couple of years. The Celtics have won pretty easily against them. That was a good bounce back spot for the Celtics, which I had mentioned. Celtics did not play badly last night against the Heat, which I was wrong about that one. But whatever the case is, I think the Knicks are going to be in a bounce back spot here after just an ugly loss. You lose by that much to anybody, even if it is a game you get up emotionally for. I think you're in a better spot, so I will be on the Knicks. That's going to do it for me, man. My college basketball plays one more time. Mississippi State plus 1.5. Michigan minus 1.5. Tennessee minus 2.5. UConn plus 3. Texas plus 3. And then the Knicks in NBA minus 1.5. Tower Gang Toad on Twitter. Patreon.com/Tower Gang for the most offensive podcast out there. And you get live pre-show, post-show for bonus content. Let's do it. Let's have a good day this time. Thanks for hanging out. Peace, guys.
All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. It is Tuesday, February 11th. We have just 4 games on today's NBA slate. Like we always do, I'm going to dive into each and every one of these games. I'll give you my prediction on the side. I'll give you my prediction on the total. We'll talk about any other plays like player props that we like within the game as well. But as always, guys, keep an eye down in the pinned comment of this video. That'll take you to all of my final plays, so I'm actually rolling with myself. If that does interest you, that'll be for free down in the pinned comment. All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. I tell you guys I'm a dummy all the time. They don't suck. They've just been sucking. Get them down to -3. 4 more juice than Jose Canseco in his prime. Tell me you're new without telling me you're new. So don't go jumping down my throat in the comments, right? If you want to fade me, or if you do want to ride me, this still leaves a bad taste in my mouth, right? And remember, more chins, more wins. All right, in terms of how we did yesterday, another 2-0 night. Now, still, I don't deem it worthy of the money gun or anything. 0.25 unit, 2 of those plays there. LaMelo did get injured, so I guess we lucked out there. And Bencaro went off for 30+. So 2 good looks there. Again, LaMelo getting injured doesn't really strike it as a good look. Probably shouldn't say that, but still sweat-free, I guess, nonetheless. So, yeah, 2 back-to-back nights of 2-0. I'm still not feeling all that tremendous, so luckily it's only a 4-game slate. I don't think we have to rush things today, but that's why we only had the 2 plays for a core unit yesterday. Like I mentioned in the video, we've been dealing with some sort of stomach bug. Things are a lot better today, so I'm hoping today's a better day, but nonetheless, that's why we were kind of light on a bigger slate yesterday.